I'm going to start by taking us on a short journey back in time, and that's going to set the scene, I hope, for our exploration of cave dwellers' brains in a technological world. So, imagine, if you will, going back 200,000 years. We'll make some comparisons here. So, 200,000 years ago, the planet would have looked pretty much as it does today. Not too many surprises there. The animals we'd see would clearly be the ancestors of the animals we see today. But a key difference would be in human population. Back then, we will have shared the planet with tens of thousands of others. Today, we share the planet with over 8 billion other people. We'd have been living hunter-gatherer lifestyles. Much of our day would have been spent crafting tools made from wood, bone, and stone. And we'd have been very particular about getting these as fit for purpose as we possibly could, because our survival depended on it. It was the skill that we used in creating these tools and then using them that would determine the quality of our next meal. Today, by contrast, we've outsourced the production of food, and it's readily available to us in the Western world at least. We'll have been living in shelters that collectively would have built with the people around us in our small community. And those shelters would have been open plan. We'd have shared meals, we'd have sat around fires, we'd have had conversations, experiences would have been shared, worries would have been explored. Compare that to today, where we live in accommodation that's been provided for us and built by others. And also the accommodation is set into small units inside called rooms. And it gives us the opportunity, whether we wish it or not, to be isolated from each other if we're not careful. I understand the statistic is that in this day and age, something like less than 25% of families sit down to a family meal together. And we'd have been on the lookout for danger. We'd have been opportunistic in that we would have gone for high-calorie foods whenever we could, basically because we didn't know when where our next meal was coming from. But also, we'd be open to the danger of threats that were real. Threats from predators, threats from the weather, and these have been real and present dangers to us. Today, we live in relatively safe existence, very little personal danger to us that's real, but we have plenty of imagined danger. But maybe the thing that would be most remarkable as our 21st century selves went back to our Paleolithic past would be this: our brains. Remarkably, the brains we have now in the 21st century are almost identical to the brains of our cave dweller ancestors. Evolution has been long. We were in this condition, we were cave dwellers for something like 3.5 million years. But the technological changes we've seen developing now have all happened largely within the last 100 years. 3.5 million years of evolution, and then rapidly, as we've moved into this stage, just a few hundred years of development, and it's increasing all the time. So, basically what I'm saying here is that our 21st century brains, as we sit in this room, are still Paleolithic brains that we inherited from at least 200,000 years ago. Now, these brains, as we saw earlier, are supremely adapted to being hunter-gatherers, to looking out for threats, and for working collaboratively in small groups, but they're not so geared towards allowing us to adapt to the rate of change that we now see and the world that we now occupy. And it's not just the problem of adapting to new technology and the rate of change. How well are we doing with that? Well, the evidence would say not very well. Mental health conditions, anxiety, stress-related conditions, these are all reaching epidemic proportions in the Western world. That's an indication that it's not the kind of world we're living in now, with its incredible rate of information exchange to us, with the artificial reward systems we get on our systems and are constantly being addressed with, and also the social comparisons that we make with others that are unrealistic. Many of the social comparisons we are able to make now on the new technologies are with people that we've not even met. Let's just have a look at that for a minute. This is data from a couple of years ago which says about how we're engaging, how young people are engaging in particular, with the new technologies, the new apps. So what we can see here is, on average, each day, people are engaging for 2 hours with TikTok, 1.5 hours with Snapchat, half an hour with Instagram, and so on. And this is totaling, on average, between 4 and 5 hours a day dedicated to social media. Our Paleolithic brains were never meant to work with this. We were meant to be having meaningful conversations in small groups, face to face, in real time. And the rewards we'd get would be the attention that others paid to us, and also the attention that we were able to pay to others in return. This isn't new. Here are a couple of images. The top one is from about 40 years ago, and the bottom one is from about 20 years ago. So 40 years ago, we were seeing the explosion of computing technology in the workplace. And there's an ironic feeling here. This represents, from beginning to end, about 7 million years of evolution. 7 million years of evolution. And ironically, we see, tongue-in-cheek, in the top picture, that the posture that we're adopting now in the 21st century is very similar to the posture of our ancestors some 7 million years ago. Below, we've got a representation from about 20 years ago. And of course, what this is focusing on is the growth in the use of mobile technologies, particularly mobile phones. And what have these led to? Well, they've led to an obsession with selfies. There it is. So, and what's more, these selfies, always taking pictures of ourselves, taking pictures of the food we're eating when we're in restaurants, taking pictures of the backdrops that are behind us, they then get pinged out to all of our friends. Numerous friends, more friends than I could ever have imagined when I was young. And these are bite-sized information that goes out. And what we wait for is the response. We wait for the response, which is a thumbs up, or a like, or a smiley face. That's our reward, our instant gratification. But the issue is that this instant gratification is soon forgotten. 2 minutes after a selfie's been sent and the responses have come in, we then forget it and move on to the next bit of instant reward. Where's it all going? What's next? Well, look, I'm not against technology. What we know is that technology has brought enormous benefits to us, particularly in the areas of healthcare. But what we're in danger of doing here is having a healthcare system with artificial intelligence that's now improving the way we can be looked after, the diagnosis of various conditions, but they're only just about keeping up with the problems that are being caused by technology in the first place, that anxiety, that depression, and the stress-related disorders. So, what's becoming more important, more than ever now, is that we start to take personal responsibility for the way we live our lives. And where does that start? The good news is it's not all doom and gloom. To start with, we have to set the foundation with education and awareness. And I'm hoping this brief speech is going to play some part in putting that education and awareness in place. We have a foundation. Then comes probably the most difficult practical step: managing technology. We are addicted, as I said before. In fact, many of the apps that people use on their mobile devices have algorithms that lock us into being the addiction that we have. If we don't go online long enough, we get reminders. If we don't go on and respond to a friend, we may be accused of ghosting them. So we're constantly being driven to engage with our technology. Breaking that is going to be tough. Once we've done that, though, we've got time for everything else that follows. Nutrition and eating habits. I mentioned earlier that we're hardwired to seek high-calorie foods whenever we can get it. That's something we can't just deny. We're still attracted to high-calorie foods. And also, we've got food available to us 24/7, usually just a cupboard away. So, getting on top of our eating habits, eating healthily, taking exercise, is the next thing that we can do to start to bridge the gap between our Paleolithic brains and our 21st century lives. Social connections. Probably enough said about social connections on the digital world. What we're geared towards isn't that instant gratification, those bite-sized chunks of information that go backwards and forwards. We're used to being communal, of sharing experiences, as I said earlier, of listening to each other, giving each other time, understanding where we're coming from. So fostering good social interactions is pretty critical if we're going to bridge this gap. One of the things I've noticed over the last few years when I'm going to restaurants is that increasingly I'm seeing people enjoying their meal, fine, but they're not talking to each other. They're on their mobile devices. And not only are they doing staccato communications on their mobile devices, but also across the dinner table or the supper table, they're doing staccato communications with each other. Where's the depth of communication? The understanding where we're coming from. How's your week been? How's your day been? Where's that coming from? It's not caught in digital interactions. So fostering real social connections that have deeper meaning is helping us get back to honouring our Paleolithic brains. Environmental consciousness. Megan told us a lot about this. What an excellent way she did that too. I don't need to say too much about this. Our planet's suffering. There's lots of reasons for that, but largely it's about the overpopulation and it's our lack of environmental consciousness that's feeding this. So what can we do here? I think there's two things. Number one, eco-friendly practices. Increasingly we're beginning to do that, and that's going to be much welcomed, of course. But the other thing we can do is to reconnect with our environment. Our Paleolithic ancestors were at harmony with the world around them. So how can we bridge that gap? Getting into the outdoors a bit more, taking exercise, and re-perspectivizing the way we see the world. Work-life balance. Okay, so I'm a baby boomer. One of the features of baby boomers was that we worked hard, and we worked hard because there were rewards. We'd be able to climb through the systems, we'd be able to be promoted. And sometimes that working hard required us to sacrifice some of our leisure time. Things have changed. I think younger people today are now much more aware of that, and they're not willing to sacrifice so much of their time to work. A much more balanced view is coming in. But work-life balance means more than that. It means, what do we do with our time when we're away from work? Are we playing video games? Are we on our social media? What are we doing? Balancing our life with all of the things I've said above, the exercise, the healthy eating, the meaningful social interactions, this is where the balance comes in. And finally, we've got continuous learning and adaptation. We've been on this planet for a very long time. Every single one of you comes from a line of successful ancestors. It's not been broken. Every one of your ancestors was successfully able to have children. You're at the end of a long success train there. Continuous learning, adaptation, that's helped all of that happen. And the pace of change is going to not slow down. If anything, it's going to get quicker. The more recent challenges in the last year are in artificial intelligence. The pace of change is going to get quicker. So, continuously learning, reflecting on what it is that's right for us, and actually putting that into place are all things that are going to help us stay healthy with our Paleolithic brains, our cave dwellers' brains in a technological world. So, in summary, fostering good social connections, spending less time on social media, on the less meaningful activities of our lives, work-life balance, where we're balancing all the different things we can do to bridge that gap. These are all things that are going to help us to actually lead better and healthier lives. Thank you.